Next on the table, to smoothen the whole morning, Mark Townsley, one of the 16 Cisco fellows. In order to get to that stage, you need to do a bit of hard work. And he has been active in the ITF in multiple functions. I don't think I need to run through all of them. You might get some jealousy in the audience, so I will. But the IPv6 rapid deployment RFC, that was quite a substantial contribution, since it got the V6 audience in France to be one of the leading end user on IPv6, and that in itself deserves an applause, if not very good start for your speech. Mark, you're ready?
Thank you very much, Latif.
Yeah.
I will wait for the engineer. No, I won't. I'll just start talking. My title slide, once it appears, says, launching our new internet protocol. And I chose that hour very deliberately. IPv4 was a gift from Vince Cerf and all the people that worked on it to the world. And IPv6 is a similar gift. We just need to unwrap it. And the unwrapping is happening now. Ah, there it is. You even get my shadow. One question, wake everybody up here. If you do me the favor, please tell me how many of you were here last year? Okay? And the favor of telling me if you're new this year. About half and half, maybe even more new people.
Yeah, that's good news. So.
That is good news. Especially good news because this slide was presented last year. Only the first couple of slides are the same because I'm putting in perspective what we've done over the past year, right? Then it's new material, not to worry. 4 billion addresses, IPv4, we all know about that. And something happened in the past decade, right? Something very important. We went from a period of time where there were more IPv4 addresses routed on the global internet than there were devices, than there were interfaces being used, okay? So before around 2005, that ratio was the opposite of what it is today, where there's twice as many or 3 times as many devices on the internet as there are routed global IPv4 addresses. And to meet the challenges of growth of the future, we have to enter a different world. Before, we were in a world where you could pick an IPv4 address out of the sky, came free from John Curran and his friends at the other RIRs, and boom, you were on the global internet, and that was the revolution, right? To grow further, you don't have this wonderful green fuel. You have this brown fuel. And the brown fuel is all these fun new technologies, CGNs and these kinds of things to help virtualize IPv4 on top of your network or steal bits away from your TCP and UDP ports, your transport ports. And that's the only way mathematically we get beyond the 32 bits and get beyond the 4 billion. Okay? And we're actively inventing all those wonderful things and trying to make you buy them or what have you, right? This is what it ends up looking like to the customer, though, right? And the operator that's buying all that junk. Stuff, sorry, it's not junk. I want to introduce a term, full spectrum internet. I came up with this one about a week ago. All the best presentations are at the last minute. Trying to communicate to people what we're talking about when we're talking about how we've got to take an address that we didn't really have to split up before amongst our customers, and now we've got to start splitting it up and what that means. And feel free to use this if you're the guy that's convinced and you understand it and you're trying to convince other people. If you're that person, maybe this is speaking to you. IPv6 gives you your full white, bright light, the full spectrum of the internet. And that's what the content providers are saying. We don't want to talk to our customers through some CGN that's going to break up your IP address into little component pieces of which the ISP decides you get this little piece, 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 right? Not to mention the ISP having to operate this equipment that's trying to keep track of all that, right? So maybe this is a good visualization for you. Back to that chart about growth. And mind you, this 15 billion and 22 billion I have up there, in 2015 and 2020, if you can't see the bottom of the slide, These are the minimum estimates I can find out there, the most conservative. The more aggressive estimates put us at 50 billion in 2020. And I think Cisco's releasing a study next week that has some data behind that. So this is where the industry wants us to go. Those of you that are working on IPv6 are trying to tell the industry, we've got some fuel out there. We just have to go use it. So where are we? What's been happening? Latif mentioned 6RD. He mentioned Free Telecom here in France. This has been our poster child of an ISP willing to just give IPv6 to their users pretty much because they could. They stopped asking why and just asked why not. And the why not equation was pretty easy. We can make modifications here, modifications there, and all this stuff kind of works. So they started doing that. And 1 year ago at this conference, they made the announcement to applause in the room that they would not just provide a little checkbox for their customers to say, I want IPv6, but would just turn it on by default whenever they change their subscription plan. Now, Free happened to be in the middle of a massive upgrade of their CPE equipment, the CPE equipment that Alain was referring to, except at Free, and which is common in Europe, is the ISP gives you a piece of equipment rather than you going to the store. And they can provide software updates for that as well. So what Free started doing with their upgrade of their CPE is just enabling IPv6 by default at that point. And they were upgrading at about 100,000 a month, which meant they went up to 4 times this. This is around 2 million. I'm not allowed to put y-axes on things, but this is around 2 million, a little bit more than 2 million. I talked to the engineer last night. I said, how many you got now? Over 2 million, okay? So that's what's happened in 1 year, around 400,000 to 2 million. Now, that's really interesting, but unless it gets replicated, it was just an interesting experiment here in France. This is a large unnamed ISP that Cisco is working with very closely with very similar technology in our products. They're at the same level that Free was 1 year ago, around 400,000. They did that in about 2 months. Their plans are more than twice as aggressive as Free's is, okay? In 1 year, to nearly triple that of what Free is today. So this large unnamed ISP, which I can't give its name of right now, but by dinner time tonight, you might be seeing some press releases around the world, and I won't have to, make you guess who it is, okay? It's just that they haven't woken up over there yet, and that's
we can close the doors and you can tell us.
Yeah. Can't do that. Right now it's a large unnamed ISP. But rest assured they've got lots of customers, and they're very aggressive about this. Now, why, right? Last year we talked about the business case of IPv6. It was the title of the keynote I gave last year. And the main point of that business case was back over here. There. Was that IPv6, this full spectrum of IPv6, is a bypass of your CGN, and that there's a business case associated with that. So what we've done is we've actually we've commissioned some analysis, and I'll be talking about that a little bit later. But before I do that, I want to switch gears to enterprise. There is a focus on enterprise this year. I know a lot of you are service providers, but this afternoon there's an enterprise panel. There's an enterprise roundtable later in the day. And service providers, those are your customers, the ones that pay the big bucks, okay? So it's very important for you to understand what they're doing. And Cisco's got, since those are all of our customers too, some pretty interesting insight. And we pulled out some data. We have something called Cisco Services, Cisco Advanced Services, where we work very closely with some of our largest campus or largest enterprises around the world. And in doing so, we pull in configuration data from all the routers, we put them in a big database, we anonymize it, and we let let the internal researchers kind of figure out what are our customers working on, what are they doing, et cetera, right? We did a report on IPv6, and between January of 2011, November of 2011, this is what you see in terms of individual routers at enterprise sites having some sort of IPv6 configuration on an interface, okay? This is probably has something to do with that little World IPv6 Day thing we did last year, right? But what it shows you is that the enterprises are turning up the v6 now, which means they're going to be talking to their service providers about getting IPv6 service. We did another thing that I wasn't able to report on last year. We had done a survey in July of 2010, just one survey, and we did another one in April. Last year was February, the conference. So having both of these surveys on at the same time is very, very interesting. We're doing another survey, I think, in March, right? There he is. Alain Fiocco is telling me, yes, the ETAB gets the same survey, so we'll have 3. If you have a hard time seeing this, I want you to say back in July of 2010, our Enterprise Technical Advisory Board members, now these are not just universities and government mandate enterprises, they are the biggest customers that Cisco cares about in terms of advising us on what to do with our enterprise equipment, what they want to do, what their challenges are. And the question was, when are you planning to deploy IPv6 in production? Not just playing around, in production, okay? 40% back in July 2010, no plans, okay? Maybe kind of expected. But a surprising 60% over the next 24 months, 1/3 of which was over the next 12 months, said, yeah, we're going to do something. Only 10% were in progress, right? This is the normal kind of depressing message. But look what happened. They actually followed through. They weren't lying, okay? By April, no plans went down to 25%, and they doubled the in progress from 10% to over 20%, okay? Now we've got over half saying they're going to be doing something within the next 12 months. Now let's see in March next month, I want to see no plans dropping down to almost nothing here and just becoming the long tail of people that are still running IE6 or something, you know. No offense, Todd, wherever he is. Todd Thorson from Microsoft, there he is. Enterprise deployment options. So how are enterprises deploying? Now, again, you're going to have the panel. I don't want to steal any thunder there. But what we're seeing in general is traditionally the way the enterprises were deploying IPv6 is what's now referred to as inside out. That is, they were deploying their core network. They deployed maybe their engineering network to support if they're selling v6 products like Todd's company, like Microsoft, like Cisco as well, enable the labs, set up GRE tunnels, whatever, run ISATAP, these kinds of things, right? But very much focused on the campus and then, I don't know, watching ping traffic inside. There was no IPv6 internet to connect to. This is completely dwarfed now in terms of new deployments by the outside-in model. Because like Alain Durand was saying earlier, content showed up big time, right? Now there's an internet to connect to. So we have these Cisco validated designs. Shannon McFarland, if you go Google for Shannon McFarland Cisco blog, IPv6, something like that, you'll find a blog from him that shows that we've got this new Cisco validated design on how to connect your internet edge of your enterprise to the IPv6 content with focus on that, right? Now what we find is generally in the very large IT companies, the guys that work on the network are different than the guys that work on the edge. So in reality, outside in and inside out are happening in parallel. But what we're seeing is just a massive pickup in the outside-in part of this, and it's because of the internet. And now that gets us back to the service providers. The enterprises that are running the outside-in model and looking at our validated designs and talking to us are going to be talking to you, if they're not already, saying, where's my IPv6 on my internet connection, my layer 3 VPN connection, whatever it is, right? So where are we? We saw some statistics on where we've been and so on and so forth. Talked about CPEs, talked about this, that, and the other. I want to put it all together end to end, and focus on 5 different areas. Applications, operating systems, home router, the CPE, ISP, and content. Now this is for fixed. Right after, we're going to do the exact same thing for wireless, because of course wireless is very important. But the state of the world is a little bit different between the two. So looking at those 5 different areas, back in 2011, this is kind of how we were, right? We had applications in terms of what people actually do by looking at the traffic on a fixed broadband network. Not every application that exists in the world, but mostly people are doing HTTP, web browsing. The browsers know how to do IPv6. Even your BitTorrent knows how to do IPv6, and that's a lot of traffic as well. So I'm going to give that somewhere between 50 and 100% on the applications, right? OSs, barely over 50% back in 2011, less than 50% before that. And the culprit there is Windows XP. Content, that's the great news, guys, right? Boom, like Alan said, 75% out of the top 100 websites or whatever. We're getting the same data too. Working with one really large fixed line provider, they put their gigascopes on there and actually took the top 300 websites and then went and checked off, all right, did this website participate in World IPv6 Day last year? Yes. So they'll probably turn on IPv6 soon. Are they committed to the IPv6 launch this year? We know they're coming on it in June. Check, right? Do they have a sister property, right? If it's, all right, Bing and Xbox are both live, well, maybe Microsoft.com will go live too, right? Or something like that. And kind of gave a ranking of committed, because you're in the launch, or probably real soon. The committed within the launch for a fixed line is a bit over 25% or around that range. But the probably real soon was well over 60%, okay? That's in line with what Alan was talking about with the 75% as well. In mobile, it's even more interesting. The top, on T-Mobile's network in the US, the top 5 websites that are in the World IPv6 launch, right? The Facebook, Google, Yahoo, et cetera. The top 5 alone, more than 50% of their traffic, right? So you've got this situation now where just by the end of this year, where you've got this potential energy of content, this potential energy of operating systems and applications, and just the need to connect them together and things start moving in step functions. So I talked about Windows XP. You know, 50, 60% of the OSs, that's not all that great, but look what's happening with Windows XP. This is Gartner data from one of their research reports. This is 2011 at 34%, which is why 30, 40% of your operating systems are not doing IPv6. Now, if you're on Ron's network at DREN, your Windows XP does do IPv6, but he's got to go out there and actually tweak it and turn it on and make it happen. That's it. In this day and age, if it's not on by default, it doesn't exist. Okay? IPv6 has to be first, or it doesn't exist, right? So I don't count Windows XP in this. But it's fine because 2012, 2013, by 2014, 2 years, we're at single-digit percentages on Windows XP. Thank you very much, Todd, for end-of-lifing your product. One of the big reasons Gartner says this is actually going to happen is because in April 2014, no more security updates, no more bug fixes in Windows XP, okay? So that's actually got people moving, right? So OS, 90%. I'm going to give that in the next couple of years, 90%. ISPs, fixed line this time. These are our top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in terms of numbers of subscribers. Inaugural participants in the World IPv6 launch. And Phil's going to be here after the break talking about the World IPv6 launch if you haven't heard of what that is. But basically, these guys have committed to 2 things, to ramping up their service to a certain level of percentage by June but also enabling IPv6 part of the normal course of business, okay? So like Free did last year, new subscribers will get IPv6 whenever possible, not just at the trial level, right? And as we saw with the big unnamed ISP, some ISPs are actually going and turning it up so fast that in 2 or 3 years, their entire base could be IPv6 enabled, right? So I'm going to give that 10%. Maybe Phil will give some encouraging news about, I've been talking to some of you, like, oh yeah, we're going to join, or we're not, we're not. Maybe after April, we'll see. Maybe that gets up to 10 or 20%, at least in terms of ISPs who've committed to enabling it by default. Because again, if you've got to click a checkbox, it doesn't exist.